Don't take a drink every time I say the animation was insane and amazing. Hello and welcome back to the Miscellaneous channel where we do miscellaneous things. I'm Zeleny. I typically cover TV, pop culture, internet trends, and other miscellaneous things on this channel, so subscribe if that's your vibe. So today I'm very excited to talk to y'all about this movie called Entergalactic on Netflix. It's actually an animated rom-com with a pretty interesting backstory, so let's just dive right in. Is Entergalactic worth watching? You can't tell by my monotone enthusiasm. Yes, it really is. Entergalactic really surprised me. I had seen some buzz on my Twitter feed about it, some clips that I found interesting. I had seen the trailer on there, but I wasn't totally sure of what it was going to be like. I was mostly intrigued by the animation style and how it's pretty artsy and experimental for animated content these days. However, once I watched it, I was even more impressed by the story and the script, which is something that can be so rare to find. It's hard with my reviews because sometimes I recommend things, but sometimes I recommend things, and this movie is I recommend it. Go watch it, and it is on Netflix, so it's fairly accessible. A lot of people are subscribed. I think I also know that this movie isn't so mainstream, so I think it might pass by a lot of people. You might not have even heard about it, so I really recommend checking it out. If you like animation, if you like illustration or art, it plays a lot with style within the movie. If you appreciate animation outside of children's media as a medium worth valuing, because historically animation has been pigeonholed into children's media and or whatever the Simpsons genre is of crude TV. Entergalactic just uses animation to its fullest potential, and it's beautiful to watch. But on top of it, if you're someone that doesn't like animation that much, but you like rom-coms and romance and dating stories, then you should definitely check it out, because beyond its visual spectacle that this movie is, the story is so grounded, the script is so fresh and funny in a way that feels new and exciting. This movie gave me all the warm and fuzzies of the classic rom-coms. If you saw the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse movie, the style is a little bit reminiscent of that, but it definitely has its unique aesthetic that I was blown away by. On Rotten Tomatoes, the movie has a 94-95%. Critics and audiences agree. It's just so good. Just watch it. Just watch it. I was already doing research on rom-coms and thinking a lot about the genre because I did a review of Bros recently, and I kind of felt hopeless about the genre, and then I watched this and I was like, I'm not hopeless no more. So let me tell you a little bit about Entergalactic, because it's kind of crazy what its backstory is. It was created by Kid Cudi, the musical artist. I knew that part, and that's about as far as I knew. This technically is not labeled as a movie. Entergalactic is labeled a television special, and I imagine that decision was mostly for award show purposes. Don't get confused by that. I think also they might intend to do other seasons or parts to it, and that's also why they didn't label it a movie, but it does feel completely like a movie. It was originally going to be a TV series. They just ended up with a total length of around a movie length, an hour and a half, and this story feels like a movie, so let's make it a movie. But also, Entergalactic is a visual companion to Kid Cudi's latest album, also called Entergalactic. I didn't realize all of the music in the movie was all Kid Cudi's music, and it was a whole album they were playing as a soundtrack. It wasn't a soundtrack of multiple artists like typical movies, I guess. I did not know any of this when watching it, and the movie stands completely on its own without knowing that it's a visual album, without knowing it was gonna be a TV show. None of that detracts from what it is independently. It's just a great rom-com, and then I found out all this and I was like, cool, it's an album too. It does have some musical moments to it and montage parts, but it felt totally normal within a rom-com movie to have musical montages. Very typical of that. I wish this was just called a movie because it's a good rom-com, because we need good rom-coms out there. So let's talk about the cast, and the characters in the movie actually look like they're voice actors. They use their facial features to make the characters, I guess. I mean, I don't know technically how they did it, but when I looked up the cast, I was like, oh shit, they look like the animated ones. Like, they're the same people. The leads of the movie are Kid Cudi plays the main character, and his love interest is played by Jessica Williams. Apparently she's from Two Dope Queens. Also notable cast members are Timothée Chalamet is in this. And I actually found out about this movie first when he posted the trailer on his Instagram. Also Ty Dolla $ign is in this, and Vanessa Hudgens, who I didn't even pay attention, and I was like ashamed of myself afterwards that I didn't recognize Queen Vanessa Hudgens' voice, because she has a very distinct voice. See, I was immersed in the story. I didn't even notice it was Vanessa Hudgens' voice. I think that's a testament to how good the story was. The only hint we get about this movie being a TV show at first is that it has chapters throughout. And chapter titles. It's funny because I've watched several movies lately that use titles and chapters to them, so I didn't think twice about it, because lately Look Both Ways and Not Okay, both movies I reviewed recently, both had chapters and titles that split up the movie throughout. So I feel like that's kind of a trend. Trend alert. Let's go ahead and discuss the movie and a little bit of recap. So the main premise of the movie is that our main character, named Jabari, is, from Wikipedia, a charming streetwear-clad artist on the cusp of real success. After a chance run-in with his cool new photographer neighbor, Meadow, Jabari has to figure out whether he can make space for love in his life. What I liked about the two leads is that they're both artists, so it lended itself well to the animated medium. The style of animation is very artistic, and it kind of has a choppy vibe to its movement, which I think Spider-Verse did that too. I remember seeing somewhere that Spider-Verse did not include any motion blur for most of its movement, which is typical of animation. I imagine Intergalactic followed that sort of trend because it does have this choppy vibe to it. Intergalactic is just the definition of utilizing animation to its fullest potential. I was constantly surprised, and it added to comedy parts, it added to emotional parts. It's not just like trying to look real, it's trying to look unreal because they're utilizing the medium. Something this movie did is they would change the animation style for flashbacks that they would show us, depending on who was narrating the flashback. That blew my mind because, for example, Jabari's best friend talks about this experience he had where he was having an affair with a Russian lady, and it was just very sexualized animation style. When you would see the story play out, it was like graphic sexual positions and stuff. On the other hand, Meadow's best friend tells her a story about her and her husband's first date, and it's like an anime type of style when she's telling that story. So it was just like, whoa, they changed the style completely to match the personality of who's telling the story. It's just like, this is what you can do that you can't do with live action. I'm getting depressed about how animation is so disrespected in media. Also, like I said, it's adult. It's an adult show. It's not an animated movie for kids. It shows nudity and sex scenes. Also, because we have Kid Cudi's album as the soundtrack, we have these musical transitions that are dreamy and galaxy imagery, and they're flying through the air, or when the two leads first see each other, it's like this explosion of color and music, and it's just supposed to capture the feeling of falling in love. What's it called? Love at first sight. Let's get into the story part, which I thought was so good. I mean, it's so simple. It's so simple. I'm not trying to say it's like, oh, revolutionary storytelling, but it was just like tight script, grounded, and relatable. It's like all you could ask for. So the setup of the movie is that Jabari is an illustrator, artist, graffiti artist who just got a cool new job and moved into a cool new apartment. Jabari has two best friends named Jimmy and Kai. Jimmy's kind of like the chill, more reasonable one, and Kai is the one with the crazy life and advice. At the beginning of the movie, we see Jabari run into his ex, Carmen, and she's really flirty with him. It His friends tell him like she can sense that he's getting successful now and that's why she's into him again. You know, just boy talk. Later that night, Jabari and Carmen actually hook up, and the morning after, he kind of realizes why she was not the one. She has all this like girl boss stuff in her room, which that's definitely my type of humor, where like the posters on Carmen's wall were the joke because they were all these inspirational girl boss quotes, and she was like this fitness girl, and it was clear in the morning after like why they're not really compatible. Jabari's kind of a more chill, artsy type and a stoner too. They just don't seem to have that much in common. They never outright mention that, you know, her walls are girl bossy, but the joke is there if you are looking for it. And I love that type of humor that's more subtle. And of course, where else would this rom-com be set but New York City? That just feels very like familiar for a rom-com. Though so many rom-coms are set in New York City, even bad ones. So the movie gets going when our romantic leads meet, and Jabari gets woken up by a loud party next door very late at night, and he goes to tell them to shut up basically and turn the music down. That's where he meets Meadow, who is the host of the party. At first he's coming in all mad, trying to tell them to shut up, but when he sees Meadow, you have the love at first sight moment, and it's beautiful, and he is into her, so he softens up a lot and is just like, oh, I'm your neighbor, and she's apologetic, and it's a sweet meet cute. Something else that was interesting was that earlier in the movie, him and Meadow kept almost crossing paths, but not, which gave it this fate element to it. They have crossed paths a lot and they don't even know it, but we know it as the audience. Once they finally meet, it's satisfying and it's a big moment. So Jabari and Meadow meet there and they have a lot of nice chemistry together. They kind of bond over their artsiness. They seem to have a lot in common. Meadow's also a stoner and she is a photographer. She's a very artsy type, and they just seem like perfect for each other. Meadow takes him to her favorite burger place. He takes her to his first graffiti piece where she takes a photograph of it. And from there, they start dating. They at first resist and don't want to have sex because they're neighbors and it could get awkward really fast. But both of their friends like encourage them to just do it and go for it. And they do, and they start dating and developing a sweet relationship. The story was just so delicious. Like, the characters felt so real and relatable. We had all the typical rom-com tropes, but it just didn't feel like forced or cliche. It felt like how real people would actually meet. And the comedy was just so good, or maybe it's just like exactly my sense of humor and it spoke to me, but I just felt like the comedy was fresh. Jabari's crazy friend Kai was just so funny and how he would give like the worst advice ever. Also, Jabari and Meadow have a point where they meet at an art gallery type party. I just thought the vagina party was so funny at showing like the kind of pretentiousness of the art world and how Meadow and Jabari have like more critical takes on it, or more realistic takes on it, of just like, this is all kind of silly. There's people like dancing as like vaginas behind them. So let's talk about the obstacles they run into. Before I get to the romance part of it, I loved how this movie depicted realistic microaggressions in the workplace that a person of color might face. When Jabari starts his new job, his Puerto Rican coworker comes into his office and is like, there's not a lot of us here, and if you want to succeed at this company, you gotta kind of assimilate. He said it in more words, but that was the gist. This coworker was encouraging Jabari to assimilate, and he had good intentions of like, if you want to survive here, you will assimilate to the white people, kind of implying that. Jabari pushes back and is like, I think they hired me because they need a fresh take and they like my work. But this other guy's just like, just trying to warn you and give you advice. And inherently it's rude that this coworker's telling him to tone himself down to fit in here. I just feel like that's such a nuanced and realistic depiction of like what racism looks like in a workplace these days. And Meadow also deals with this, it's way later in the movie, but she deals with it when she's setting up her art show, and there's this other artist there who I think is white. I mean, she looks white. But this other artist is kind of taking over her space, and it's kind of like, oh, I thought you weren't coming to this, so I took a little of your space, sorry. Which is just like rude. But then this girl is also like, oh, I'm gonna go back to talking to that white guy over there. And it's just like, you're just trying to relate by using that type of language when it's like, you're a white person too. Why are you being like, I'm gonna talk to that white guy over there? And again, this interaction is like well-intentioned. The girl is really friendly. Her and Meadow are on good terms, even through towards the end of the movie. They're on great terms and everything. They have to be, because Meadow has to like just ignore those things to not cause drama in this art show thing. You know, it's like none of this is stated outright. It's subtle. It's subtext. It wasn't the characters saying, I experienced racism in my workplace and that's annoying. Entergalactic didn't tell us. They showed us those types of interactions, and if you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't. And I liked that. It makes it more real. So as far as the romantic obstacles, our main plot is of course the romance. And the main obstacle that they found, first of all, I mean, Jabari and Meadow are both trying to figure out what like love means to them, mostly Jabari because we're following him. Their relationship's going well for about a month or so, and then Meadow sees a sext from Carmen, Jabari's ex. Carmen had sent him a photo in his hoodie, and we had seen him wear the hoodie for a lot of the movie. So Carmen sent this photo of herself that was suggestive and in his hoodie, and saying something's always fit, and implying that there was something going on between Carmen and Jabari. Meadow sees this and does not respond well. I mean, she doesn't confront Jabari, she just starts to distance herself as much as she can from him. However, we learn after that that Jabari is not cheating, because when I first saw that text, I was like, Jabari, are you a fucking cheater? Because I am so pissed if so. But no, we see a flashback of what actually happened, and Carmen had called Jabari to come get a rat out of her apartment, and he just happened to have left his hoodie there. So Jabari was not cheating. He's a good guy. No need to get out the pitchforks. But because of this misunderstanding, they distance themselves. Jabari does not do a good job of being like, hey, there's no cheating here. Which I was just like, oh my god, just tell her the truth, because nothing happened. But anyway, their respective friends are both encouraging them to like go back to each other and figure things out, because they were a good match and they were both very excited about each other. We see a nice scene where Jabari gets advice from his older sister. I actually saw this quote go kind of viral on Twitter, and it's the quote where the older sister tells him, love is easy when it happens by accident, but it only gets real when you start doing it on purpose. And that was kind of the realization that Jabari needed to go after Meadow, and that leads us into our climax, where Meadow is giving a speech at her gallery opening. She wants Jabari to show up, but doesn't expect him to because she's been ignoring him. She starts giving her speech, and of course Jabari shows up in the audience, and it's a very sweet thing. It's funny, it's kind of like a very similar ending to Bros, but in Entergalactic I was like even more invested. I liked Bros okay, you can check out my video on that. But Entergalactic had just set up this story and characters so well and so thoroughly that I was like really on the edge of my seat for this ending. So Meadow gives this very inspirational speech about photography and what it means to her, and it was a really great speech. It was like about how photography is about capturing the moment and making time stop, and it was very poetic, and I was like, yes, like I love someone talking about their art in a poetic way. It's And in this speech, there was another like good comedy but relatable, realistic moment where she has this beautiful, inspirational speech about her art, and then she ends it with like, or whatever, I'm just hungry, or just plays it off as a joke. And it was the kind of exact thing I would expect from real life. Like someone got too kind of caught up in the poetic speech that they had to like diffuse it a little at the end by making it casual again. And also the animation. When Jabari went to go pick up his hoodie from Carmen, the hoodie, which we had seen all throughout the movie, said closure on it, and he takes the hoodie, but the word closure remains on the screen, implying that this interaction with Carmen where he's kind of breaking it off officially with her, was his closure. And it was just, oh, sounds like I'm being dramatic, but it took my breath away. I was like, gagged, literally. There was one point where they're texting each other and someone texts the Meryl Streep gif, and it was just like an animated version of the Meryl Streep gif where she's like, and as far as the obstacle we had here between them, I was like yelling at the movie, like, this is a misunderstanding, he didn't cheat, like, just talk to each other when they were distancing. And I like that that obstacle was a little more mundane. It felt like a real issue that a couple might have, that it wasn't like this ridiculous hijinks situation that you could never imagine. Like, it's something you could picture in real life, and what made it interesting was like the richness of the dialogue and the visuals, of course. So in the final moments of the movie, we have Meadow trying to find Jabari after her speech. He was in the audience, but then he disappeared. So she's running after him, and she runs outside and sees a billboard with his graffiti on it and a burger, and it implies, you know, he went to her favorite burger place. So there they meet up and finally reconcile and have their nice final kiss, and that's where the movie ends. This movie did have a recurring motif of a dating app that was in this world called Stush. From the very beginning of the movie, we saw advertisements for Stush in the background constantly. We heard other characters that were on the app and using it. I thought the point of that was to show the dating landscape of when they're finding each other, and maybe to emphasize how special it is to have found each other for Meadow and Jabari. But at the very end, they show that the app was like stealing information and money from the users of the app, and it felt kind of like, whoa, okay, like, is the lesson here not to use dating apps? Because sometimes you just have to. It's not like a shameful thing to be on dating apps. I was kind of confused what the moral was of the dating app part of it. I do think it emphasizes the specialness of the relationship of the main couple, but I don't know if that final, maybe it was just comedy. It was just like, oh, the people on the dating app are screwed. But that motif showed up a lot. Like, every scene almost you saw an advertisement for the dating app. So I don't know how many more compliments I can give to this movie. I think I've said it all. Also, it's just a great movie for representation. It has 2 black leads, a lot of black characters, and I just laughed out loud a lot at this movie. Like, other rom-coms, I'm like, yeah, they're funny, and I chuckled here and there, but this one, I was like, laughing hard. I'm kind of confused about what makes a good rom-com. Like, is the key to a good rom-com not trying to make a rom-com? Because this movie was anything but a movie until it became a movie. That was the best rom-com I've seen this year. Like, not even labeled a movie technically on the back end. It's a television special, also like a visual album, and it was also like gonna be a TV show. So I cracked the code. The key to making a good rom-com is to try to make something that's not a rom-com, and it might happen. Obviously not an accident, but like, that it's a rom-com movie was kind of not intended. And I'm excited for more. I mean, they seem to want to do more installments of it. Also, I'm like excited about Kid Cudi and his career as like a producer and creator. Moral of the story is we need more adult animation and more exploration with the animation medium. Yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts on Intergalactic. If you've seen it, if you plan to watch, what were your favorite things about it? I would love to hear about it in the comments below. I hope you give it a chance if you haven't already. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel if you enjoyed. I put out new videos once or twice a week about TV, pop culture, internet trends, and other miscellaneous things. You can follow me at Miscellaneous on Instagram or Twitter to find out about new videos, or just turn on the bell notification here on YouTube. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.